Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How Can Your Database Work for You? With your MAPS coach, Steve Schlueter. Please note this webinar is being recorded and you'll automatically receive the webinar recording. If you have any questions for your coach, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar. Following the webinar, if you have any questions about today's call or coaching program, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's fasttrack@kw.com. All right, that's all for me, Steve. Go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thank you, Jasmine. Hey, welcome everybody. Love that you're here for a session on making your database work for you. My name's Steve Schlueter. As Jasmine said, I'm the author of Never Ending Referrals, also a bold coach. I'm operating principal at Keller Williams, involved in multiple market centers, and have been a mega agent. And referrals were always the lifeblood of my business. And what we're really here today to discuss is how do we make a database work for you? How do we start to build a business that feels like it's ease and elegance? It's one that we're really excited about when we wake up each day. And, I think about some of the reasons people might be here today. Why did you show up on a webinar on making your database work for you? And, one of the things that we find is there could be a lot of reasons. Maybe you're tired of the battle over SEO optimization. Maybe circle prospecting feels like a dead end. Maybe you're tired of paying for leads and you go that there's got to be a better way that I can invest my capital and my time to get a higher return on my effort and my capital. And maybe you've heard Gary Keller say over and over and over again that your business is your database. And it's really never been more important today than any time than today, because our industry, of course, as you know, is going through some change. It's going through disruption. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And as we get started today, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to go through a little gap analysis to help you explore maybe just what kind of financial opportunity resides within your database for you, accessible to you right now. And then we're going to go into maybe exploring how we think about a database, why it's important today, what some of the opportunities are in terms of how it can position us for the future of our business. And if we're thinking tactically and strategically like a business person should, how we have to think about our marketplace. And we're going to talk a little bit of philosophy around database and structure. And well, Diana tells us 90% of success is mindset. And we'll explore that. And then we're going to spend the second half of our hour together digging into some real meat of, here are some things that you can start doing with your database after you get off the webinar today to make it work for you at a higher level. And I got to tell you, I attended the Tech Roadshow 2 days ago, ladies and gentlemen, and where we're going with technology is tremendous, and everything we're discussing will work with your new technology as well. And let's get into it. Let's go. And we're going to start off with a little gap analysis. And this is where you're going to want to have a calculator, do a little calculation real quick. And I want to ask that everybody play here. Don't be casually listening, because you're about to explore, well, maybe how to give yourself a tremendous raise in 2019. So here's a couple of things I'd like you to fill out. And so I'd like you to write down for A, the number of people in your MET database. Now, what is a MET database? Now, these are the people that you know, they know you. Ideally, y'all like each other. That's okay. Maybe they're not necessarily past clients. They're your sphere of influence. And maybe you have it organized into a structured CRM or database. Maybe you don't. Doesn't matter. If you did have it organized, how many do you believe would be in it? And that's your answer for A. Now, I'd like you to take A, multiply it by 0.10, of course, that being 10%, and that's going to give us B. So the number in your database, or that would be in your database, had you had it organized, if you don't, would be B. Now, in C, I'm going to have you, we could actually use 2018 right there, because you already know what you're going to close in 18 at this point. And so if we just want to say this past year, or you can use 2017, this past year, how many closings did you have from the group in A? Either they directly did business with you or they referred somebody who closed. So it's either direct business from that group that was in A or somebody they referred who turned into closed business. Now, your D is going to be subtracting the number that would be a 10% return of your database in line B, subtracting the number that actually closed in the last 12 months, and that's going to give us our gap. So take C, subtract it from B, and that's our units gap. Now let me explain this. So what we're saying is that when you work a database, when you really get the most of your database, you should be able to get a 10% return on your database. Anybody on this webinar today can get a 10% return on a MET database, especially when we're clear on what it is and how we work it. And so that's B is your 10% return. Subtract how many you actually are going to close. Let's use 2018 since the year's finally, about done, and subtract that from what a 10% return would be and how many units was the gap. And then multiply that times your average commission. So take the number for line D times your average commission, and that's your right now 10% database opportunity. That's the gap between where you are and where you can be at a 10% return. Now, if you don't have a gap, congratulations, you're one of the few who is at a 10% return. Then our journey would be then to walk you from that place to a 15% or better return on your database. So let's do a little poll real quick. I'd like to get a sense of how much financial opportunity is within the group right now. There's about 180 of you on this webinar right now, and let's take a poll and see just how much opportunity exists out there. So let's go into the screen. So what is my NER 10% opportunity on line E? Is it 1,000 to 25,000, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, more than 100, or are you one of the lucky ones who's already getting a 10% return on your database? Let's explore the opportunity. Everybody play. It's been voting season. You had a lot of that here in the last month. You know how to do this. And let's examine where this opportunity is. All right, got about a third of you voted. Keep on coming. Let's do that math. And let's see what our opportunity is. And get excited about the number. And if you're already at 10%, be excited about that because you've got the foundation to go to 15% or more. All right, I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. Let's get a few more votes in, and we're going to take a look at what we've got here. All right, closing the poll. And let's take a look at the results. So right now we've got, we've got 48% have 50,000 or more in opportunity sitting there in your database right now. 50,000 or more. 14% of you have 25 to 50,000 in opportunity, and 26% of you, you're close to optimized in your database. You've got 1,000 to 25,000 in opportunity, and congratulations to those of you already at a 10% return. You're ready to make the catapult to a 15 to 17% return. In fact, in reading The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the formula, the lead generation model on a MET database is 2 closed transactions for every 12 in your database, and that represents a 17% return. And we know that most people aren't getting that because it takes 3 to 5 years of intentional effort, working a strategic plan and system with a database to get to that kind of return. So some of you have done really well to be at 10% already, and that's your foundation. And yet there's probably some other opportunity you're not aware of that's residing for you right now, and we're going to take a look at that. So let me just do one quick check of the questions box. All right, and yeah, so the question, so Paula, the answer was the Millionaire Real Estate Agent formula for a MET database is 2 closed transactions 2 closed transactions for every 12 you have in your database. And we say 2 for 12 rather than 1 for 6 because it's 1 repeat and it's 1 referral. Okay, got it. Alexander says sound going in and out. If that's the case, can you put yes in the question box, or it might be on your end, Alexander? Fine over here, says Michelle. Okay, sound is fine here, no issues. All right. Okay, some of you might be having some bandwidth problems on your end. I'm getting people saying the sound is going just fine. So don't need any more responses there because you're all responding and got to clear all that out. All right. I'm a new agent. This doesn't apply to me yet. Jackie, it absolutely applies to you. And let me tell you why. Why this applies to you is the answer is 0. You had 0 transactions in the previous year. And so how this applies to you is whatever would be in your Met database is a sphere of influence. This is your community. In fact, we're going to talk about what a sphere of influence could be right here in just a second. And so the 10% return it's those relationships you have out there of people that know you and like you. And the relationships that we're going to show you how to build, we're going to touch on those briefly today. And should you just make the decision to join us in Never Ending Referrals, we'll take you through exactly how to build a database and grow it by 250 or more, in a 12-month period. Never Ending Referrals is what it stands for. NER, Never Ending Referrals. So there you go. All right, so let's jump into this. I want to take you to the next journey here. I'm going to hide the poll. And we're going to move on from here. And I've got a really crazy question for you. And, crazy questions are about making you think. And so here's my crazy question for you. And I'll give you a little foundation for this. I had one of my agents, we were talking about her goals for her year, and her name is Mary. And when we started talking about her goals, I talked about her goals for referral and repeat business. And the number she gave me was rather low. And I said, how many are in your database? And she said, well, about 200. And here's what I knew about Mary. I knew Mary, no way did Mary only have 200. She's got 5 kids. They're all involved in stuff. She's very active in her church and her community. And I'm going, no way she's got 200 or should have only 200 in a database. And so I asked her the crazy question I'm going to ask you now. And then in a moment, I'm going to have y'all go to the questions box and I'm going to have you put in an answer for me. And here's what I asked Mary. I said, Mary, who's your favorite performing artist? I mean, your favorite performing popular artist that man, if they had a show coming to town, you wouldn't want to miss it. It wouldn't matter what the dollar cost of the ticket was. There's no way you're going to miss this show. And she said, Beyonce. And for me, it'd be can't even think of the name, the Zach Brown band. And so she says Beyonce. And I said, well, Beyonce, that's awesome. And so let me ask you this. I said, if you were throwing the 4th of July blowout of 4th of July blowouts, and Beyonce was going to play your 4th of July party, and you'd won a contest, it wasn't going to cost you a dime. And yet the only guests that were going to be allowed were people who would come to the gate and say, here's how I know Mary. And Mary would at least know me through an acquaintance or a friend. She would know who I am, and I know who Mary is. I said, how many would be at your Beyonce 4th of July blowout, excluding real estate agents, that are reasonably local? And she said, well, Steve, it'd have to be at least 600. Now, remember, she told me a moment ago her database was 200 people. And I stood there silently for a moment, and she had this aha come across her face. And she was about to go into bold a few weeks later, and she said, wow, I'm going to start working on who that next 250 or 300 are, and I'm going to start connecting with them during bold. And within about 2.5 weeks, she had identified the next 250 that she was cultivating for her database. So her database was really bigger than she was giving herself credit for, or that she had developed. So here's what I'd like you to write down. How many would be at your 4th of July blowout? Or if you're a Canadian on the line, how about Canada Day blowout? And how many would be there? How many would be there? And what's the difference between what you wrote down in A when you did the gap analysis and what you wrote down for your 4th of July blowout? What's the difference? Put it in the question box. How many more people do you have when you answer that question? So Fred says, I'd have another 250 that I added to that would be in my database. Tara says another 300. Yeah, Douglas, I don't know, man. I just had to really think about that one. You know, Fred, so 25 at a 10% or 250 at a 10% return is an additional 25 transactions. You know, Tara, 300 is another 30 transactions. Robin, another 100 is another 10 transactions at a 10% return. Paula, 375 at least, she says. So that'd be another 37 to 38 transactions at a 10% return. And so here you have Xander 250, Anne Marie 350, Christina 200, Julie 50. And 50, Julie, that's nothing to sneeze at, because that's a 10% return. That's another 5 transactions a year that's there if you just identify and then go cultivate those 50 transactions using a system. So, Vanessa. Okay, Vanessa, you get the big prize here, another 700. Vanessa Johnson, another 700. It's another 70 transactions potential when you cultivate that and really develop those relationships the way we're going to talk about today and set the foundation for it. So I share all this with you to set some foundation for us, and I like to share with you the genesis or the foundation of where this program, Never Ending Referrals, that is the foundation of what we're discussing today, comes from. In 2008, in fact, it was September 11th, 2008, Tony DeCello, the gentleman you see on the screen, and I were in Chicago, Illinois, and Gary Keller had asked Tony to take the Shift book tour, Shift book tour, out on the road. We were in the Great Recession, real estate market was cratering all over the country, and I was Tony's backup. So if Tony couldn't get to a location, I was there to back him up, and I'm with him on the first location in Chicago, and we've got about 600 people in the room, and Tony asked a question. He asked a question of the audience, and he asked them to please stand up. And he said, how many of you, by standing up, are touching your Met database 28 to 33 times per year? And of course, MREA is always prescribed a 33 touch. And in fact, let me clear this questions box real quick in case any more come through. And so he asked the question, how many of you are doing that? About 15% of the room stood up. And then he asked a clarifying question. He said, remain standing. And of you standing, of those 28 to 33 touches that you're doing annually, how many of you, at least 4 of those touches, are face-to-face or personal contact over the phone, face-to-face or over the phone? And the room went from 15% to 3%. And this is something Tony and I began to coin as the 3% crisis. And we called it the 3% crisis because it kept showing up in room after room after room after room, unfortunately, month after month and year after year. And when we said something had to be done, and that's where the foundation for creating this program came, is we kept looking for the answers. How do we help our agents, make these vital connections with their database and do it in a way that's elegant and coming from contribution? And that's what we're here to talk about today, is overcoming this thing called the 3% crisis. In fact, Zillow did a study recently. They polled 13,240 or so households that had closed their real estate transaction a year prior. And they asked with what frequency they had heard from their real estate agent since they closed their home. 74% said never. 22% said occasionally. 6% said regularly. And so it pretty much validates, what we're saying here. And this was 10 years ago. It was a 3% crisis. I tested today, and it still runs in many rooms about 5 or 6%. Really in line with what Zillow's study said. So I have a quick question for you, and I'd love to put this in the questions box. is what do these three have in common? The travel agent, the video store rental owner, and the real estate agent, what do they all have in common? Any thoughts? Put them in the questions box. Obsolescence. Clients and customers are all in sales, selling. Leads, provide a service. These are all, interesting comment. Massive online competition. Yes. So, you talk about obsolescence, online competition. A lot of it could now be done online. Disruption. Write this word down. I'd like you to write down this word. It's a dirty word, so don't be telling Keller Williams International about this dirty word I'm about to share with you. Disintermediation. Disintermediation. Now, disintermediation is where something or someone comes between you and your client relationship. And let's look at what they really have in common. And it's not what they have in common as much as who they have in common. Now, the travel agent, well, Expedia was the disruptive force in the travel industry that really disintermediated the travel agent. Blockbuster, well, they got Netflixed. Gary talked about this at Family Reunion. And then, of course, there's Zillow in the real estate space. Now, what these all have in common is I want you to write this name down. The name is Rich Barton. Rich Barton, Barton. And Rich Barton, excuse me, I'm going to click through clearing this. Rich Barton is the founder of Expedia. Rich Barton is on the board of directors for Netflix. And he also founded a little company called Zillow. And so you can see what has occurred over time and the degree of disruption. And I'm here to share with you some good news before we get into how we take and we become the disruptors ourselves. How do we take this back? How do we not become the disintermediated travel agent? How do we not become the dinosaur that is a Blockbuster or video store? And how, as a real estate agent, do we maintain a strong relationship with the consumer? And that's what we're here to talk about next. And there's some good news about this, and I'm here to share with you the good news. And the good news is going to be largely dependent upon the actions you take after you get off this webinar. And so let's walk through a conversation I had with Gary Keller. When I was a team leader, I was a team leader for Gary Keller. Gary Keller was my operating principal. I was team leader of the Austin Northwest Market Center. And .com era one, 1999, 2000, when, Amazon was just coming on, eBay was the hot thing, and anything with a .com after it was getting crazy venture capital and was the sexy thing. And there was all this talk at that time about disruption and disintermediation. And one of the things that Gary and I sat down and discussed one day was this thing called commodities. And let's start at the bottom. And this is what we call the 4 types of commodities. And you're about to see this one slide right here is going to explain the strategy you have to have for the rest of your business career as a real estate agent to protect yourself getting the highest commission, to maintaining your relationship with your database, to adding value. Is you have to understand what we're about to discuss right now. And here's what Gary and I discussed. And Gary said, well, let's talk about this thing called commodities in e-commerce and the internet. He said, there's this thing we call a standard commodity, and we'll start at the bottom. And he goes, those are books, those are sundries. And at the time, it would have been like CDs, And he said, all these things, the internet handles fabulously. I mean, it's because a book is a book, whether you get it at Amazon or if you go to the brick and mortar store. A shampoo is shampoo, whether you get it at Amazon or the brick and mortar store. Then, of course, choice commodities, this would be like an airline or a hotel. And an airline ticket, well, that would be, I just have to decide what day I want to go, where am I going, what class of service, excuse me, what class of service. All of this is real simple to conduct online. And then we got to this conversation about custom commodities. Now, I don't know if there's anybody out there on the webinar who's a golfer. And surely if your if your score is struggling a little bit, Michael says, me, he's raising his hand. So Michael, as a golfer, I mean, if your handicap is not really going where you want, maybe you're just really struggling around the course, it's got to be the golf clubs, right? It can't be the operator. It's got to be the golf clubs. And so you decide you're going to buy a custom set of Ping irons. Now, you can go to Ping's website, and they do have a place there for you to go through some measurements, some questions, to make a decision to make all these selections and do all these entries. And based upon your choices, they'll build you a custom set of clubs. And you'll spend about $2,300 or $2,400, and you're praying you got it right. And I know if it's me, if I'm going to do something custom of that nature, there are probably 10% of hobbyists that would do that. Most of us are going to go to a professional golf shop, and they call it a fitter. And I'm going to go to a professional fitter who's going to make sure I get fitted right with the right hosel, lie, the right club shaft length, the right stiffness, the right everything, grip size. I want it done right. I'm not going to trust that to me. And see, here's the interesting thing. We're not even to real estate yet. See, real estate is a unique commodity. In most cases, I mean, there could be a high-rise condo building where pretty much everything's all the same and in terms of the units, but they're all decorated different. And they all have a different view and have been upgraded in different ways. So, and even in that, we're really still dealing with a unique commodity. And so the good news is, as much as e-commerce easily disrupts standard and choice commodities, it's a little tougher with custom, and it's really tough with unique. So that's the good news. You deal in a unique commodity. I was having this conversation with a group of agents in Conroe, Texas, and we were on Lake Conroe at a marina in their clubhouse overlooking beautiful lakefront homes and these beautiful boats. And I said, aren't you excited that you deal in this lakefront unique property? You deal in a unique commodity. And I said, there's a decision, though, that hasn't been made yet. Although we deal in a product called a unique commodity, well, are you the agent going to stay a unique commodity? Are you going to be a custom commodity, or are you going to become a choice, or a choice where they simply go look at a rating, or are you going to be a choice where they simply go look at reviews and they make a choice and they think any agent is an agent, and there really isn't such a thing as custom or unique. So with that in mind, it comes this thing Gary teaches us on page 96 of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. He said, where the industry wants you to go, and the way you control this is by your relationships with your database. The industry wants you to become a functionary, which is low level, low relationship, assumes little responsibility. If we go down to the bottom of that, follows rules and procedures, is replaceable, and is minimally paid. Whereas the choice we have when we engage our relationships, we engage our database in a place of adding value, it's high level, it's high relationship, it accepts high responsibility. On the bottom of that, we're irreplaceable and we're highly paid. So the conversation we're having today, I said we needed to start with mindset, because this is the mindset. We have to come from this position that unless we choose the right side, the forces in the industry are going to push you to the left side. And the way we do this, and Gary, in his interview with Brad Inman, if you did not watch it, go back and find it. It's about 31, 32 minutes and it was all about disruption. At the very end, yep, they do want it, Douglas. At the very end of the interview, Gary Keller is asked by Brad Inman, what is the one thing the agents can do to protect themselves from disruption? And Gary said they got to work a database and build and add value to relationships. He said if they'll work a database, they're going to be just fine. And this was at Inman Connect during all this conversation about disruption. And Gary said, it's really up to you. You get to decide how it all plays out. And it's all about how we work a database. See, Gary said, You've got to be that economist of choice for your local real estate markets. You got to be your professional duty to be that person that they ask, trust, and listen to when it comes to real estate. And you go build that position. So here's the last thing I want to talk to you about on just kind of mindset, and then we're going to get into some practical to-dos. You've probably, if you've taken the 6 personal perspectives, you've seen this image, and it's called entrepreneurial to purposeful. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here other than to say that what happens is when we start off, our adventure, whether it's real estate or any career or, hobby even or sport, sooner or later we hit ceilings. And when we hit ceilings, we've kind of hit our fundamental entrepreneurial ability, meaning what we can do naturally has just gotten to this point. And if we're going to go further through training, coaching, consulting, we go to a purposeful style. And if we look at purposeful style down in this right-hand corner, I've highlighted that bigger. Write these things down. If you're going to be purposeful, it's these 5 components that build a purposeful approach. And this applies to your database or any part of your business. And it's focus, strategic options, models, systems, and accountability. So again, right there, focus, strategic options, models, systems, and accountability. Now I want you to put an asterisk next to focus and an asterisk next to accountability. So I had a conversation with Gary Keller on this subject a number of years ago, and he shared with me, and this is probably something you've not heard about this, even if you're familiar with E2P. Gary and I are having this conversation, and he said, Steve, most people, they believe that they can accomplish, especially high achievers, believe they can accomplish just about anything they want through sheer focus and sheer accountability. And he goes, that's a myth. In fact, he goes, they've got it all wrong. And I want you to be clear on that, because sometimes we're just choose to let's willpower this through focus and through accountability. And he says that's all wrong. And he says it's the often forgotten middle 3 is the sweet spot. That's where the juice is. And he said, you got to figure out the strategic options, the models, and the systems. And then once you have the strategic options, models, and systems dialed in correctly, then you bring focus and accountability to that. Now that should be an aha for you guys. It was for me. And, because I was one of those who loved to, be a bull in a china closet and power through to my goals. And where I was missing ease and elegance was I wasn't getting crystal clear on the middle 3 first, and then bringing focus and accountability to that. Now, strategic options, what do we mean by that? There are some of you on this webinar who your database might consist of 50 people or less. You just moved into the community you're living in 6 or 8 months ago. And then there's others of you that you're in a community you've lived in all your life. You've been there your whole life, hundreds, thousands of people possibly. And the options are going to be different for you based upon your situation. Now, based upon that, what are the models and systems as they're going to apply to your database for the options that are appropriate to you? So the purpose of the Never Ending Referrals program that you're being introduced to is to build the middle 3, is to have you leave the 8-week session, the 8 sessions, being clear on your options, having your models dialed in into systems that are right for you, that you will then bring focus and accountability to get the results that you desire. So before we go in, what do we mean by models? So for example, the 8x8, which we discussed, which is a way you launch relationships, is a model. The 36 touch campaign, which is your communication campaign, is a model. And all of it fits into what we would call the lead generation model. You got it. Yeah. All right, so let's keep going here. And so now write these down. We're going to start getting into the what to do's. And the whole program that we're discussing today, Never Ending Referrals, is built upon millionaire real estate agent. And we've taken and we've packaged it, those models and those strategies into a system, a user-friendly, executable system for you to put and deploy. Now, the system is built around the 4 laws of the database. I'd like you to write these down. Number 1, it's build and organize it. And number 2, it's feed it daily, meaning you got to grow your database. It's not healthy if it doesn't continue to grow. Number 3 is communicate systematically. So today that would be our 8x8 to launch a relationship, our 36 touch campaign, our social media, what we call care connections. And then of course, working, the business that comes from it, work everything that comes from it would be the 4th law of the database. And by the way, they're not suggestions, they're laws, that they are must that have to be followed through to get the results one's desires. Now, not to dive into that, but yes, if you've taken the KPA or a DISC or any other behavioral assessment, every single behavioral style has some kind of hang up or limiting belief around why they struggle with the database. That's why we have the 3% crisis. Law 4 was work everything that comes from it, Robin. Yeah. And we're not going to get into this. We get into this in session 2 of the program. And yet what we've done is in this system is we've built out scripts, dialogue, strategies that really work for every behavioral style. I just want to talk about the assertive for a second, because some of y'all might be able to relate to this. I know when I got into real estate, the lady that sat behind me in the kind of bullpen where I was, her name was Jerry Mesco, and Jerry, very social, and she'd be on the phone. She'd go, "Hey, girlfriend, what's going on?" And she's talking to people like this, and that's not me. And then one day she sees I'm working hard, and she goes, "Steve, if you'll just be friends with all your clients and just reach out to all your friends and just you'll get a bunch of referrals and just get a bunch of clients, and someday just be friends with them all." And I'm as a high assertive, I'm thinking to myself, I've got 4 friends. I don't need any more friends. And then I later learned that I could be their trusted real estate advisor, that I didn't have to be everybody's friend. And then I said, that's somebody I can be. Now, for somebody who's a high social, they're going to have a different need, to emotionally connect with a database. And they're going to have hangups like fearing rejection or fearing like they're bothering people. And we'll address all that in session 2. The point I just want to make here, don't be a prisoner to your behavior when it comes to the database. See, I'm the person that when I first started my career, I would rather call an expired or for sale owner or knock on a door than just call somebody and have a chit chat call. Asking about how Fluffy was doing and what they were doing for the holidays, and all that didn't feel authentic. And I learned how to become their trusted real estate advisor, and that was a person I could be. So that said, let's jump in. So we talked about the 4 laws, which were build it, feed it, communicate, and work all the leads that come from it. The stated goal in Never Ending Referrals is just this in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. It's to get a minimum 10% return on your database and grow it to 250 people. We do that by executing and developing your 5 strategies around each of the 4 laws. Now, this is if you're familiar with a tool called the GPS or the 135. This is a GPS with a 1 extra in the middle. It's like a 1 big goal is the 10% return, 250 people added. The 4 replaces what would be a 135, be a 145, and then the 5 strategies for each of the 4 laws. And so this is where we customize your plan. 250 added per year. Yes, ma'am, Mary. Yeah, so it's growing your database. And that's essentially 1 every business day if you think about it. And so let's break this down. And first I want to talk to you about, part of this, how we organize it. If you've taken Bold, you probably remember this slide in session 4. In session 4 of Bold, when we talk about the 33 touch, right here in this section, it said personal telephone calls. It said call 2 letters of the alphabet a week and you make 4 contacts a year. And I thought about that and I said, man, that's an elegant little approach because I can just chunk it down, call 2 letters a week. And man, so, and by the way, there's 26 letters divided by 2, that's 13. 13 times 4 is 52. Man, that works. And so as a Bold coach, I really began to point this out to people, how elegant a little strategy that was for part of how you might organize your contacts for calls and how you might call them. And we've had this slide up there about 4 years into being a bowl coach. I'm one of the original bowl coaches that started with Diana in 2009, instructing bowl. And about 4 years into it, and I've got 3 locations back to back, about 90 people apiece. And I'm asking the room of those that have taken bowl more than once. I said, how many of you are doing this? First room of 90 was 0. Second room of 90 was 0. Third room of 90 was 0. And I said, oh my God, that's not good. And I said, we're still hanging out the 3% crisis because people aren't making the phone calls. And here's a simple little elegant way to do it. And then it hit me. I said, why is that not happening? And why it wasn't happening is there's a bold law, you probably know it, is people grow into the conversations you have around them. And what I realized is people weren't having this conversation around each other. The market centers weren't. They heard it one time in bold. And so we developed a little system that is the foundational underpinning of never-ending referrals. We call it DTD2, or doing the database 2. And we took the 26 letters and we broke it up into 13 2-letter groups. Here's 2 of them. B and E, be the master of your database, is the theme that week. I and Q, brilliant agents work their database. So if you were at Mega Camp, you heard $100 million producer on the stage say, we connect with our database using DTD2 from Never Ending Referrals. I met a lady at Coach's Skills Camp, Kristen from Minneapolis, who said, I've been working this system and it's taken me, from up to 12 million. The Websters in Oklahoma, who went from, about 42 transactions to 76, simply working DTD2, organizing their database and creating a communication system around this. And it's so much more than this. It's the way you organize your database. And we're going to show you how you use it with social media here in just a second. So one of these little simple things about how we organize and build a database, we got to understand this foundational piece in Never Ending Referrals we call doing the database 2. And whoops, I don't know where the M went on this. But one of the things we take you through in building and organize it is creating the DTD2 groups within your CRM. And so now it's organized in a way where you attack it quarterly. And of course, part of what this does is it gets you out of call bias. And by the way, we've got the tutorials for importing your contacts and making all that happen. And so we'll walk you through all the steps to set up your database DTD2 style to get it done. And again, this is something you can set it up in any groups. We set them up in groups that were kind of balanced based upon population statistics per the census, and how it was by last name. We did research on this, and then also creating the themes. Let's talk about Feed It for a second. In your handouts tab, you should have a tab on your GoToWebinar control panel where there is a handout. And I'd like you to grab that handout right now, if you would, off of there, and just store it on your computer. And you can come back to it later. And one of the best opportunities for growing your database is business to business. For those folks that said, I've already accounted for a large portion of my database. If I were going to grow it by 100, 150, or 200 or more in the next year, I would go grow it business to business. What are those business relationships? And the 5-star script is a nice, elegant way to do that. And let me walk you through it for a second. Let me pull up a different screen here, if I could. Bear with me. And we'll pull up the 5-star script. And again, you'll find this if you look on the GoToWebinar control panel, you should have a tab that says handouts, and you'll see a PDF file there. Now, keep in mind, I don't know if y'all saw that. I believe this made the national news. It was in San Antonio, I believe it happened. A gentleman and his wife hired a contractor through Angie's List, who turned out to be a felon, left them high and dry, and was certified by Angie's List as having background checked and all this. And then So they went to Angie's List. They expect Angie's List to make it right. Make it right. And they said, not our problem. And in the terms and conditions, we're not responsible. Well, hold it, you just certified this person. And stories like that, and yet where are they going to go if they don't have a great person to go to? They're going to go to a place like Angie's List. And yet Gary asked us at Family Reunion a number of years ago, I think 2 years ago, he said, why does Angie's List even exist? They shouldn't be going to Angie's List. They should be coming to you. And this is one of those little conversations and add values you can give to a database. So let me walk you through it. And you can follow along. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. We'll just go through. And so the script basically goes like this. It's the introduction. It's your name. Hey, thanks for taking my call. You're calling into your relationships. Hey, I was calling today, see if you can help me with a project. Doug, I'll just use Douglas here. Hey, Douglas, I was calling to see if you could help me with a project today we're working on for our friends and clients. And obviously, as a real estate professional, I've got clients moving into the area just constantly, and they're in needs of all kinds of services and service providers that they left behind where they left. And I was just curious if you had a 5-star experience in the last few weeks with anyone that just gives you service. I mean, who's blown your socks away? This has really been a 5-star experience for you in the last week or so, last week or 2 weeks. And let's say that Douglas says, we just hired this company, 3 Trees Landscaping, and they came up and trimmed our trees, and they've been here 3 times now, and they're amazing, and they're neatly dressed, and they do more than is expected. We've been really blown away by 3 Trees Landscaping. I go, well, that's fantastic. Do you happen to have a contact for me at 3 Trees I could call? I'd love to add them to our directory. And so Douglas gives me the contact information, and I ask permission to use his name, of course, which he's going to give because he's given somebody a big attaboy. And now I have a warm business-to-business contact that I can reach out to. Now I'm not done. And then I go, well, Douglas, here, thanks for really helping me with that. And hey, maybe there's another way you can help me. I've had a lot of people asking about CPAs or tax preparers this year. And quite honestly, I don't really have a 5-star relationship in that area. Do you have somebody in that space you could introduce me to? Do you have a 5-star CPA? And let's say Douglas says no. I said, Douglas, do you have a need for one? And when I come across that one, would you like me to make an introduction? And let's say Douglas says yes. I said, well, great. Now I'll make sure it happens as soon as somebody in our network points somebody out. I'll make that happen. Hey, Douglas, thanks for your assistance with this project. And as it comes together, I'm going to share with you how to access it through our app and through a directory that we'll have for you that we'll send out, and make sure you have this resource available. Hey, Douglas, is there anybody in the neighborhood or work right now that's considering buying or selling that we could help? And we wrap up asking for a referral. Hey, thanks. I really appreciate that. Hey, is there anything I can do for you? And Douglas simply says, it was great to connect with you. Or says, that's it. All I need is that CPA. And you say, great. It was great to connect with you. Have an amazing week. And so think about what you just accomplished. Yeah, clever, Douglas says. Yeah, it's smart than average bear every once in a while. And then, well, you think about what you accomplished. Number 1, you got a warm business-to-business lead. Number 2, you possibly got an introduction to a space you've been attempting to fill in your directory. And when you get that introduction, say to the CPA, if they didn't have one for you, sooner or later someone will. And maybe as you're going through your DTD2 cycle, now think about what I introduced to you a moment ago in DTD2. With DTD2, you'd be making the same call for 13 weeks. You'd really have this dialed in every 2-letter group, and you're going to stay out of call bias because you're not making judgments about who has a referral. You're adding value. You're building a directory. You're asking to, and you're, by the way, you're demonstrating you have high standards because you're talking about 5-star people that you're looking for this. And so when we think about this, ultimately you're going to get that CPA, and CPA is just a placeholder for anything. It's whatever slot you're attempting to fill, right? And when you get that great CPA, if you have 5 people that are looking for a great CPA, you contact the CPA, and you got warm leads. Maybe you get 2 CPAs and you got 3 for one and 2 for another. And you start a new business to business relationship, adding value to them right off the bat. So that's the 5-star script. It's a great strategy for building a business to business database. Yeah. Hi, how did you determine who to call? Now, who I'm calling, Jack, is I'm just calling the people in my Met database, right? And I'm asking them to contribute to our directory. So this is just a service I'm building, and then they're going to tell me, who the 5-star people are, and this is going to be a list that's generated by my folks. All right, perfect. Yeah, and perfect. Okay, just what is the 36 or 8 by 8 if they have no email? Physical mail still works, ladies and gentlemen, especially if you call them. In fact, in session 2, we go through, how you make marketing work, digital or, print. It's in the foundation of conversations and creating what we call flow in the relationship. We'll talk about that. Now, let me go back to the rest of this, and I want to. There's a few things I want to cover with you, and I want to tell you how to get involved in NER. I want to get you to social media here real quick, because this is a fun thing. And yet, when I say fun around social media, I'm always careful, because it's easy to get sucked into the vortex of social media and spend way too much time on it. And the combination of social media and DTD2 gives you a way to get in and out of social media, maybe 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, 10 to 15 minutes in the evening, and be very tactical about it. And the way we do this is we have a little model. Somebody asked, what's a model? Here it is again. Here's another example of a model. When we get into social media, we encourage you to look at this little model we call CARE. And CARE stands, you might want to write it down, for connect, alert, refer, and engage. So many times when we get on Facebook, we're going, what do I want to post about? Well, we take you through how to maybe think about a post that's a connection opportunity. Is there an opportunity to alert people to something? And it could be alert to an opportunity, alert to a scam, alert to a resource. It could be a refer, a great experience you had that you get to share. It could be something that came from the conversation we just talked about, right? And then, of course, engage is how do you work to get face-to-face, versus Facebook to Facebook with people and get a real engagement. So let's look at this. And we talked about this thing called DTD2, and I want to show you how this looks in Facebook. So if we decide that we're going to organize our database this way in terms of our communication system and our organization system, let's look at how this translates to social media. So in Facebook, you can go to this place where you add and develop what we call Facebook friends list. In CRMs, we call them groups, right? You have your groups that you create. In Facebook, where there are groups, and what we're really talking about here is what we call custom friends list. And you find that under See More. You'd click in there, you'd click on the box See More. And I encourage you to do this after you get off the webinar today. Just click on See More, and you're going to see Friends List. Click on Friends List, and it's going to bring you to this space where you can create a list. You click on Create List up here, and then you get to name your list. And let's say we named it one of our DTD2 groups, whether it's C and K, as you see here, B and E, A and W. We create a list name for our DTD2s, and then we start populating the list. We were able to add friends to that list based upon, their last their first letter of their last name. So in this case, my H and V group, it's going to be everybody whose last name begins with V or last name begins with H. And so I start going through here and I populate it. And then once I have it populated, then I can do broadcast messages to just a individual DTD2 group. So if I'm calling that group this week or next week, I can prime that call with a broadcast message, or I can do a bunch of individual messages, cut and paste just to those individuals in that group, and it's going to go direct to them and nobody else. Now, here's the other beautiful thing. If you're like a lot of our clients, they like to do some social media stalking before they get on their calls to their DTD2 group. And so when you go into here, you can look at the news feed of just an individual group. If it's B&E week and I'm calling my B&Es either this week or next week, well, let me look at what's going on with everybody in my B&E group that I have in Facebook that's also part of my CRM, and I've got them organized here accordingly, and all the other garbage goes away. All of it goes away. All I see is the feeds of that group that I desire to see. Yeah, can we have access to these slides after the webinar? Yeah, you should be getting a bounce back with the recording of the webinar. So you'll be able to come back here and pause it and go back and listen to it, Mark, as much as you choose, okay? You got it, my friend. All right, here we go. All right, so lastly on Work It, one of the things that's probably the most vital piece of working a database is in session 2, we get in how do you classify your database. And essentially, if you go to Millionaire Real Estate Agent, there are 4 groups. There is your Network Met group, which is your sphere of influence, might do business with you, might not do business with you. And then we get into Allied Resources, that's people within the real estate community you do business with. Advocates, wouldn't use anybody but you, and wouldn't use anybody, let anybody else they know use anybody except for you. And then core advocates, just like an advocate, it's just they're uniquely placed. Now I'm going through those kind of quick because I really want to talk about nurtures before we wrap up. And then I'm going to tell you how to get involved in Never Ending Referrals if you'd like to go deep dive and learn how to build your strategic 1-4-5 that's going to propel your database success here in 2019. This thing called a nurture. When you're working your database DTD2 style, you're building trust, you're adding value to your relationships, you're moving up that fiduciary ladder, right? You're becoming that unique commodity, that custom commodity for your network. And when you do that, they trust you, they listen to you, they ask you questions about what's happening in the market. And because they trust you, they give you referrals. And some of those referrals many of them, in fact, aren't going to be ready to do something immediately. They just started the process. They've got a lease to fulfill. They've got, credit issues, or the timing is, 6, 8, 10, 12 months down the road. And this category we call nurtures. In fact, the research done by Gary's team, reflecting on top agents and the listings they take and the buyers they close when they source them, part of what they found through the sourcing efforts was that 70 to 75% of them came from follow-up activity. So it wasn't the first conversation, it was the subsequent conversations. And so when we get to the point of Work It, we're saying really working the system so that you land those nurtures in the boat, right? You got to keep reeling it in, and sometimes you might have to go reset the hook. I'm sorry to use fishing analogies. You get it, though, to paint that picture. And we'll get into some of the nurture strategy as well. So what we do in Never Ending Referrals, it's 8 sessions. And the 8 sessions take you through setting the foundation, setting up and understanding DTD2. We cover behavioral styles and some of the things to overcome with behavior, the right scripts that are suited for your behavioral style, and we get into who are you being for your database. In session 3, it's all about business to business and social media. One of the biggest opportunities for growing our database in many cases will be business to business. And through the 5-star script, you saw just how powerful that can be and how abundant it can be. Session 4, we get into client events. And what you'll learn about client events is it's not about the party. It's about the contacts you have around. The daily group, who we interview in this session, they do 6 key events a year plus smaller ones. And those 6 key events will probably have about 6 contact points around each one. And so if you think about 6 events, 6 contact points, that's 36. Where we heard that before, right? And the dailies do 150 to 200 transactions a year, primarily off events. We'll take you through how to cement the new relationship so that you build it for the 10% return the moment it goes in your database. The local expert trusted advisor session. So how do you build to that fiduciary level where they ask you, trust you, listen to it? We do talk about the other database, geofarming, and then of course we get into the power of video and pull it all together, the system all together there in the end in session 8. So how do you get involved with this? The enrollment for Never Ending Referrals, if you want to really do a deep dive on this, because obviously this is about all I can give you in an hour, is we start January 4th. And January 4th, 11 a.m., 8 sessions, so one each week. And if you go to getmapsnow.com, you're offered a 15% discount. Just select Never Ending Referrals, get enrolled. So you'll be paying about $214 for 8 weeks of coaching with myself and my partner, Tammy Younks. Now, by the way, Tammy Younks is the tech side. She's the techie side of this. And we've got your tech tutorials on how to import into your CRM, how to do all the organization. We take you step by step in the tech tutorials, which you'll have provided for you on video with all the screenshots to walk you through how to set all that up. And as we make the move to Command, everything will migrate from eEdge to Command here, sometime in the early part of the year, first or second quarter. The tutorials will be updated, and you'll have access to all the updated tutorials as well. So a total of $214. Yes, that is, I believe, is what the 15% discount comes to. So if you go to Get Maps Now, you're going to select Never Ending Referrals, and we would love to have you on the journey with us to help you make the most of your database. So I'm here to answer any calls that you have. Let me go back, and I'll keep that screen up. Let's see if you got any questions. Feel free. I'll take the time to answer all the questions that you have. Here's Fred. Great call. Just finishing up my second year, and clearly I'm doing much of the right thing. Go, Fred. I love hearing that. I'd like to learn more about coaching. Well, you just did, my friend. Let's get signed up now and join us on the journey. Love to have you on the journey. Fred says he's in. Got it. Jack's already signed up. Love that. How do I get involved with DTD2? Jack, we're going to set that right up for you at the very first session. So just know that the first week of the year, the next DTD2 cycle in the new year starts January 7th. That's where the cycle starts. We've got a national calendar around DTD2, and the first 2-letter group is A and W. In fact, in our market centers, we have a kickoff party every time we do a DTD2 cycle, and we have a power day and A and W root beer float party. The theme is sweet success. So, it's again, we're having a conversation that we can grow into. And by the way, have a little fun with this, right? Come on, it doesn't have to be work. Let's make it fun. So just get your A's and W's prepared, Jack, for the first week of the year, and that'll be a good start. Do you know if Lion Desk transfers easily? I don't know that, Mary. Do feel free to put in well, here's the thing to check, Mary. As long as you can do an export CSV file, you'll be fine. And what I would do is right now I would go ahead and do an export CSV file, because I don't know what companies might lock down if they feel threatened that people are going to leave them. So I would get that database kind of exported into CSV file right now, and as long as it'll do that, you should be fine. Starts January 4th, Alexander. Yeah. Just want to run this by my wife. She gets home in a couple hours. Yep, you're good. So just get on there to Get Maps Now. That'll be good through the weekend. And so just get enrolled, and love to have you on the journey, my friend. My team uses Follow Up Boss for a CRM. Do you have to be using a K2 assistant? Great question, Anne-Marie. No, this applies to any CRM. This is not a CRM dependent course. The tutorials we provide are eEdge until such time as Command is in broad adoption. And we encourage those that don't have an active CRM that they're using to, go ahead and launch this in eEdge, because the migration will be quite simple for, from eEdge to Command. But Follow Up Boss, good CRM. One of our top agents in one of my market centers, very active user in Follow Up Boss, at the Tech Roadshow said, yeah, we're definitely making the move to Command, and Follow Up Boss is a good tool. But everything you need to do, you can do in Follow Up Boss. So you'll just apply the same principles, and you'll have to look at their tutorials, Anne-Marie. Okay. KW Mexico. Don't have access to all that yet as far as the technology. So really, Pamela, any of the things, the principles we apply can be done in any kind of way you could organize it. So a basic, simple CRM of any sort will work. It doesn't have to be EDGE or Command, just as long as you have a way you can organize your database. It could be Outlook, for goodness sake. And yet, ideally, a real estate specific CRM is always the way to go. Okay. Christina, I love it. She said, I'm ready to crush 2019. Yeehaw. Is coaching pre-recorded, or are there live question and answer portion? This session, we are building an on-demand platform for this where you could get all weeks at one time. I believe this session is going to be all live. When we go to the on-demand portion, Sally, where you have access to all 8 courses at one time, there will always be live Q&A sessions every 2 weeks. But right now, my understanding is we're going to be likely all 8 sessions live yet this round while the on-demand platform is being built. Or who knows, you might have both. That's still a conversation that's in the works. And yet you'll always have access to us for questions and answers. And all sessions are recorded. So if you miss a session, you have them for the duration plus 60 days after the course is over. When you B2B, is there a specific position person to ask for? Because I get this is a place of business from receptionist when I call B2B. A lot of it's about having the right script, and are you taking new clients? And oftentimes the gatekeeper can be the best person. I have a gentleman I know who made a fortune. Every Monday, he's in Minneapolis, and every Monday he'd go to the secretaries of the CEOs. They all had a vase on their desk, and they got fresh flowers delivered every week from him. They were the gatekeepers, and his relationship was with them. They knew more that was going on than everybody else. So we'll get into that a little deeper. And yet, Douglas, it's our job to help them see us as the goose that laid the golden egg. See, we often don't realize that we're the first, second point of contact for many people moving into a new area, maybe third point of contact on the outside. And that means every business owner out there should desire to know you, because you're the one that knows the new consumer that's coming into the market. And wouldn't they love to be the one that the real estate agents who are having that first, second, third point of contact have on their mind? So a lot of it is how we position ourselves, Douglas. Hope that helps. Link to sign up, it's right here on the screen, getmapsnow.com, and then scroll till you find Never Ending Referrals. And if anybody's having any trouble with that, let me give you an email address. You can go to Fast Track, FASTTRACK, Fast Track at kw.com, and they can help you register as well. Okay? Let's see what else we got here. All right, can't wait for January 4th. Looking forward to it, Fred. What can you begin doing now to organize our database before 1/4? I would say first start with getting it clean, and that means go look at where do I have missing emails. Start going ahead and organizing it DTD2 style. Let me give you the first 3-letter groups, and if you can have those ready to import, well, here's what you can do. If you're not actively using eEdge, go to technology and go to eEdge and go to the import section and how to import your contacts. And I might just start importing one group at a time. So the first 3 DTD2 groups are this: A and W, B and E, and then D and O. And then if you want to do one more, it's H and V. If you notice the second, third, and fourth, it's B and E is B, D and O is do, H and V is have, B do have. That's a bold law. And so again, we built a little gamification into this a little bit, Mary. So I would say, start with that. Get those first 3-4 weeks organized. Look for missing phone numbers, missing emails. Where do you need to gather addresses? maybe just make a little, check in with them, call and say, hey, I was wanting to send you a note or send you a card, and I realized I didn't have your address, or I was missing something. Could be a good place to start. When is command going to be ready? Above my pay grade, Mary. I'm not stepping in that one, girl. And yet it seems to be kind of end of first quarter. Family reunion seems to be the what I'm hearing right now. Okay. All right. I have two databases: Follow Up Boss, eEdge, and Disorganized. So I need help to consolidate, and then how we're transitioning over to KW Command. This is here's the great thing, Michael, about DTD2. DTD2 is also your maintenance schedule. And what I would do is figure out a consolidation game plan. And what I might do is just take one DTD2 group at a time and say, okay, so first week is A&W. Let's get into our A&Ws. Let's go through everything in Follow Up Boss. Let's go through everything in eEdge. Let's look at what we have to merge or what's missing in terms of data and decide where we're going to put it or what needs to be cleaned up. And, if you get it cleaned up in eEdge, the migration, to command should be quite clean. And so just chunking it down DTD2 style. And then, of course, you're going to hit that same DTD2 group every quarter. And this becomes part of your maintenance schedule. So you just, okay, I'm cleaning it up a little bit at a time. If I don't get it all this cycle, I pick it up the second cycle and I tag whatever I need to, still needing maintenance. And I come back and I give it maintenance. It's the beauty of DTD2, my friend. What's the timeline for webinars? It's 1 hour. So it's 1 hour. And the first one might go an hour and 5 minutes. There's generally a lot of questions. So what is the next session? I'm on vacation the 4th week of January and the 1st week of February. No worries. Everything's recorded for your access, and you can jump right in and catch up. Let's replace my top producer. Well, it'll work perfectly, Jack, with top producer. Command is absolutely going to replace it if you make the choice to go there. And if you haven't been to a tech roadshow, go, because it'll give you a vision for how Command is going to work with our consumer app and all those things that are coming out. The consumer app should be coming out first part of the second quarter, and how it's going to interact with your Command dashboard and your deals and everything else that with the consumer. You're going to want to make that move. And right now, you can continue to use Top Producer until that time comes. Sign up, Ruben. GetMapsNow.com. Join us on the journey. Yeah, Michael, Command is, at various stages of rollout, and own a florist, and February 15th would be a problem. Can this be accessed? You got it. I think we covered that, Virginia. Thank you. Michael says, look out 2019. What time of day? It's 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Peggy. All right. And you guys have wonderful questions. How can I get the 5-star script? It's still in the handouts tab right there. If for some reason you're not able to access it in the handouts tab, here's my direct email. And I'm about to leave here shortly to go look at a dog and at the pound. And so I'm going to be leaving, and I'll handle it when I come back. Steve S, STEVES, as in Sam, at KW.com. Steve S as in Sam, at KW.com. So if for some reason you were not able to download that 5-star script, let me know, and I'll get it to you. Oh, you found it. I guess I should have read on. Who do we say referred us? Good question. Probably none, if that's the case. I forgot there's a referral thing on that site. Or you can put Steve Schleter there if it gives you that as an option, or just put bold as an option as well. Sorry about that. Steve Schleter is the presenter name. And just feel free to select anybody. If it doesn't offer my name, Steven Schleter or Steve Schleter, just pick one. Okay, we talked about the script. My name's Steve Schleter. Hey, I'm a boomer too, Miho, so I get it. Yeah, Miho, it just you might want to get a virtual assistant. Somebody can help you on the journey. Teenager is always good. Do you think it is best to wait till command comes out and not do intermediary transfer with my existing database to eEdge? As long as what Mary, as long as what you have, you can organize into groups. That's a way to help you clean it up. And again, just make sure whatever you have, you can export to a CSV. And they will tell you the most important thing to be ready for command is to have a clean database. Really doesn't matter what it's in, as long as it can export via CSV file, and you can, it'll give you a file with the various, headings of your fields with all the important data and so forth. So you'll probably be okay, Mary. Most important thing is to be working, and as long as you can do that, you'll be okay. Every week on Friday, except for family reunion week, it should have the schedule for you there when you go to register. Yeah. How do we get the discounted rate? Just it has you at $199. Well, $199 is cheaper than the discounted rate. So get maps now. Yep, Jasmine.
Hey, Steve. So when they register online, they're already getting that discounted rate with the link on our Get Maps Now page.
So Get Maps Now has got it built into it automatically, so it'll roll over and it'll give you the discounted thing automatically when you check out. Is that right, Jasmine?
Yes.
Okay, Fred, got it. Okay, let's see if I got to keep reading. They already solved it. The letter sequence, Shawanda, the first 4 weeks are A and W, B and E, like bacon and eggs, D and O, and then H and V. All right. Shawanda, your last question. That looks like it does it. Jasmine, we are going to put a bow tie on it, my friend.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll be sending out a recording and the link to register if you do want to register for the program.
Thank you. Appreciate your help, Jasmine.
Thank you.